Post-workout shakes. Some people have problems with them. What can you do, and what are some of the mistakes people are making? Stay tuned.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. This is Tampa Pro Week, and in just a couple of days, Dave, myself, will be in Tampa at the Tampa Pro, bringing you division by division, wall-to-wall coverage like we do when we're there in person. Dave, right now, you are actually in Orlando and doing this show while on family vacation. That right there is dedication.
Oh, my hair's a mess. See, I was at the Typhoon Lagoon today in Disney, which has the highest waves, by the way, highest wave pool in the country, 6-foot waves. My kids couldn't get them out of there. We were in the lazy river. We were going down water slides. I did 20,000 steps today, even though I like to make fun of people who measure steps. And but I wouldn't miss this show for my life. So we're doing this, and then we're driving from Orlando with the kids and my girlfriend to the Tampa Pro, and we're going to be there on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and we're going to be interviewing people. Logan wants to go to the show, so my son Logan's going to go to his first full bodybuilding show, and hopefully he'll get to interview some people. So that'll be great.
So it'll be a lot of fun. And again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below. We're going to have a lot of content from the Tampa Pro. If you're not already following us on Instagram, official_RXMuscle, we're going to have division by division coverage. So we're going to have pictures and all sorts of other content on all of our platforms. We go to the questions, the first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. How do we know the central nervous system is overloaded, and what can we do to relax it?
I mean, what overloads the central nervous system? I mean, obviously overtraining can do that a little bit. High androgen drugs like trenbolone can do that. Anadrol sometimes get you really riled up. You can't even sleep at night, right? From that, because they get you so hyped up, and they cause too much sympathetic nervous system stimulation, which obviously causes the heart to race, gives you anxiety. Too much energy drinks, too much caffeine or ephedra can do that to you as well. So what can we do to alleviate that? Well, if you drink too much caffeine, cut it back, obviously. If you do too much trenbolone, cut it back. Some people just can't handle a lot of trenbolone. If you are on trenbolone and you look good and you're taking a reasonable dose, of the stuff, 50 milligrams, 3-4 times a week, and you're still having trouble sleeping or being overstimulated, I mean, I hate to say it, but you might need to take something to relax yourself at night. Sometimes, like I have, guys get prescriptions for Xanax from their doctors, and they'll maybe take a very small amount, just prior to bedtime to help them sleep the last, 2, 3, 4 weeks before a show. If it gets that bad, it's not something you want to rely on because you can become addicted to that. Taking a supplement that has GABA and melatonin in it, like Somalize, which is my nighttime sleep aid product from Species Nutrition, also has these some fat burning qualities and appetite suppression qualities as well while you're sleeping. Taking that is really good because GABA relaxes the central nervous system. It is the natural relaxation neurotransmitter in the body. When you take additional GABA, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it will relax the brain and help your body just chill out. It reduces that sympathetic tone, and it just it says go to sleep, or chill. And that's a good thing to do. And then obviously the melatonin on top of that will keep you in a deeper state of sleep. So I relied very heavily on that back in the days when I was competing. I was a big GABA person. And that's why when I made Species Nutrition after I retired, That was one of the first products that I put. It was lipolyzed and somalysed because I was taking melatonin and GABA every night anyway. Generically speaking, I would have like 2 bottles of it, and that's where we put together somalysed.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. What is a good alternative to post-workout shakes? My stomach just can't handle them anymore. After the gym, I'm just not that hungry either.
Yeah, most people are not hungry after really tough workouts, and that's the reason why you do post-workout shakes, because I mean they're quickly absorbed, but they're also, it's a lot easier to just gulp down a shake than it is to eat a meal, especially after a heavy back workout or after a heavy, intense, leg training session. The problem is, I think a lot of people try to eat too many carbs post-workout. So what I see is a lot of times, like I make a product, Carbolyze. It's unflavored. It's just basically a waxy maize or high molecular weight carb or high molecular weight amylopectin, for one of the exact, terminology for it. And what it is, it's a big convoluted carbohydrate molecule, but it has properties that allow it to be absorbed more readily and more quickly than even sugar. It doesn't cause bloating. It doesn't, mess your stomach up. But if you take too much of it, I know guys that are pounding 150 grams of the stuff, or 150 grams of sugar, or 150 grams of some other maltodextrin, and your body just can't process that much. It's too much in your stomach, especially right after a workout. You only need about 40, 50 grams max. And if you do that, if you stick to those levels, especially with my product Carbolyze, mixed with like a good whey isolate, like our Isolyze, you're not going to have any stomach distress. It's going to get absorbed easily. It's going to go down. You're going to absorb it, no problem. But if you start pounding, I know guys, I know it, and especially the guys who do the insulin protocols, like the insulin protocol, it requires a lot of carbs. They're doing 150 grams of carbs, before the workout. They're doing 50 grams. During the workout, they're doing 150 grams after. It just bloats the shit out of your stomach. And I don't care even if you're using a product like Carbolyze, it's going to upset your stomach. You're going to get diarrhea from it. And you just can't process all those carbs like that. And so even with insulin and all these other things, it's not going to help you absorb the food. So my suggestion is 50 grams of 50, 60 grams of protein max and 40, 50 grams of carbs max post workout. You don't need to take a ton of insulin with it. It's going to do the job. The job is get the protein into the muscle so that the mTOR protein machinery switch can be flipped on. Once that's on, now your body's repairing muscle. Okay. The carbohydrate component of the post-workout shake is to start to reglycogenate the muscle. That means put back that glycogen, stored glucose molecules that were exhausted while you train. So number one, we're trying to turn on the protein, repair machinery using protein or whey isolate, which is the most easily absorbed at that point. It's because it doesn't require any digestion, essentially. And then we were also trying to put back the lost glycogen. That's the whole purpose of the shake. That's why you do it. And you can eat an hour later or eat 2 hours later if you want. Get the shake and just don't overdo it. You don't need 150 grams of carbs to reglycogenate the muscles. 50 is plenty. These two questions also from the Dave Palumbo Experience app are really good questions. Once again, we get a ton of great questions on the app. If you don't subscribe to the app already, it's $29 a month. You can download it from your iTunes store, your Android store, right to your phone. You'll have Dave Palumbo as your coach in your back pocket, which is very, very handy because not only do you have access to all my writings and all my videos in an organized fashion, but I answer everyone's questions in an open forum. So you get to see everyone's questions and answers, which is a great learning experience. I do a Q&A video exclusively for the app members every single week. And that's something really great because you get like an extra Ask Dave with these great questions and answers that I answer. And then we put workouts up every week and we add all new kind of stuff. So it's like a constant evolving source of information. You guys have been supporting it for years. I continue to do it because you do. And I'm going to thank you for that. Thank you.
Before we go to the rest of our questions, our friends at Titan Medical Center switching it up a little bit. They have a new GLP that's an oral. So for those of you that have been taking their weight loss therapies, all the injectables, they now have one in an alternative fashion. It is an oral. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is they also started offering oxandrolone at Titan Medical Center.
Two good things. First of all, I have not seen anyone who've used the oral GLP-1 agonists, so I don't know how effectively they work. However, for people who don't like shots, it's a great thing. Also, a lot of companies have stopped making retatrutide, okay, and because the copyright infringement type stuff, but they still have some competent pharmacies that are making the retatrutide. So don't worry about that. But the really exciting thing is now they have oxandrolone, which is also known as Anavar. Before they weren't prescribing that. Now, if you want to get Anavar, if you're a man or a woman, at least you don't have to worry about it. Is it real? Because, a lot of the Anavar out there is fake. You can get that from TitanMedicalCenter.com. When you do contact them, make sure you tell them Dave Palumbo, RXMuscle sent you. You're going to get a great discount.
So go again, check them out, TitanMedicalCenter.com. You can call 727-389-3220. Check out all of their therapies, their medical weight loss, and of course, what we always want to mention for bodybuilders in particular is the fact that they do offer blood work at a discounted rate, which is very useful for bodybuilders, especially those that do not have insurance. We're going to go to the rest of our questions, primarily from our YouTube community page. We had a bunch of questions last week that we didn't get to, so we wanted to address some of them here on this episode. This is a question, Dave, that you do get time and time again, and not just you, but bodybuilders from the 90s, the 2000s. And the question is always about the differences in terms of cycles between now and back in the day. But in particular, they want to know, how long were your off-season cycles during your career?
When I first started, in the 90s, really guys would do shorter cycles, 8 to 12 weeks, take off sometimes 8 to 12 weeks, and then do it again. That was kind of like what people just did back then. I kind of started to come up with my own ideas, my own theories. And what I was doing, towards the end of my career, the second half of my career, was I was staying on off. I would do off season for probably whatever the off season was, 6 months or whatever. And then I would go into the pre-contest, cycle. I wouldn't take a break at all. I'd go through the contest, season. After the show was over, the day after the show was over, I was done. I was off. I didn't take any more drugs. I tapered off, clenbuterol usually if I was on any. And usually I wasn't taking any T3 the last half of my career. I didn't need it. I was really lean. Had I been taken, I would have tapered off that. And that was it. There was nothing more to it. I mean, I would do my PCT. I would do 2 weeks of HCG, 2 weeks of Clomid. And then what I would do is ultimately I would go 4 weeks completely off and clean out. So I was off 8 weeks out of every year, 8 to 10 weeks probably. And the rest of the year I would stay on. And that was consistently. And like I said, I'm not against guys staying on for a long period of time, but you got to take at least one off period every year.
This is another question that we've gotten time and time as far as bodybuilders that you met, and your answer has always been Ronnie Coleman to those that who blew you away the first time. But a bodybuilder that you met, this is a good one. The first ever pro bodybuilder that you ever met in person, and what were they like?
I think who was the most. Well, I mean, Lou Ferrigno was always like a big hero of mine, but he wasn't the first guy I met in person. I would say the first person up close that I really saw first pro was probably Gary Stridham. This is before he went to the WBF. He was still big and freaky. He was at some show in Jersey. And I'm pretty sure it was him. And I was so embarrassed. Well, not embarrassed. I was so intimidated, I guess, that I actually made my sister take a picture with him. I'm like, you could take a picture with him. I'm like, my sister wanted to take a picture with him. And just because I wanted to have the picture. And that's how to. Then the most impressive person I think I told you probably that I saw guest pose was Dorian Yates. But that was like another year later, like in 92, right before 93, right before he went on to win the Olympia that year. But I had already seen a few pro bodybuilders. But Dorian was the most impressive guy I had seen in person. Lavroni I saw in 95, and then I helped him in 96 for the Arnold. So yeah, but I would probably say it was probably Gary Stridham, but I think the most impressed, the guy who really shocked the crap out of me was Dorian Yates in 93.
Question about oral Winstrol. Is there a safe way to take oral Winstrol? Just looking for a little bit more muscle and hardness. I'm not a competitor, 53 years old, on TRT, 5'11", 185 pounds, and lean. So he wants to know if it's safe to take oral Winstrol.
Yeah, it's fine. A lot. It's funny. I had a guy asking me today about, he's taking injectable Winstrol, and it's really, really leaving him sore because when you inject Winstrol, it's like powder in water essentially, and it's just irritating to the tissue that you inject it into. And I was explaining, he's like, I'm really trying to get some oral Winstrol. I said, well, you can drink the injectable Winstrol. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, is powdered Winstrol in water. There's no difference from it. And he didn't realize that because, most injectable drugs are, bound to esters like enanthate, cypionate, decanoate, all the different ones that, that we're thinking of. But actually Winstrol suspension, what it means is they're suspending sterile Winstrol powder in water. So you could actually inject the water, or not inject it, you can squirt it into your mouth and just swallow it if you want. But yeah, oral Winstrol has a slightly higher toxicity rate because it's going through the liver an extra additional time as you're swallowing it. It gets absorbed through the intestinal tract, but it's not really that bad. It's not a very powerful compound where it's causing a lot of toxicity. And if you did like 8-week cycles of it, like pre-contest or something like that, I don't think you'd have any problems with it. I never see elevated liver enzymes on it that are anything elevated above or beyond what we normally see just from regular training. So I don't really think of Anavar or Winstrol, oral as being particularly, toxic. Most people wouldn't take it for long periods of time anyway. 8 weeks is nothing. My doctor friend, the guy who I consider my original mentor, Dr. Mike, used to tell me that Winstrol or Anavar is way, way less toxic than even drinking one beer a day. So when you put that into perspective, you kind of realize it's pretty safe.
Question about cialis. Your thoughts on using PDE5 inhibitors like cialis to help someone with blood pressure as they are gaining mass?
It's not a great blood pressure medication, which is why they never made it as a blood pressure medication. It was repurposed because, obviously it helps, with men have erections, but it definitely does drop blood pressure a little bit. And I think that if you have high blood pressure, and let's say you're taking an ACE inhibitor like I do, like Ramipril, I've been taking it for 30 years, 5 milligrams twice a day. If you throw cialis in there, and because let's say you're a little, even with the blood pressure med you're on, maybe you're on a cycle, off season, you're a little bit higher than you'd like, it'll bring it down a little bit. It's not going to be like the do-all end-all. You're not going to use cialis as your blood pressure medication. It's just not that good. But in addition to like an ACE inhibitor or even an angiotensin receptor blocker, like telmisartan or valsartan, it'll definitely add a little boost to it, and it'll make it work a little better. So, a lot of people like it because obviously they get the erection effect from it. Plus, they get a little bit of a. I never felt a pump in the gym from using cialis. The few times I used it, but some people claim that they feel a pump in the gym. I think the pump is really between your legs is what it is. But it definitely does drop blood pressure a little bit. So be careful if you are on a blood pressure med and you are, maybe even pre-contest and your blood pressure is a little lower than it normally is. It could knock you down real low. Some people get a little dizzy on it. Some people can get like ringing in their ears, or the room can spin. You got to be very careful because it does. And some people take too much of it. So, the daily dose of cialis is like 5 milligrams. But I know guys that take 20 milligrams a day, every single day, which is way too much, I think. And especially if you take too much of it on a regular basis, what happens is you can get desensitized to it. I don't think it works as well. So use it as you need it. Or if you want to do the daily 5 milligrams a day, that's a low enough dosage that you shouldn't have any problems.
If money and health weren't factors, you have unlimited funds and whatever you take, you're going to be absolutely healthy. Right. How would you prep an athlete to gain as much muscle as possible over the course of 1 year? Food, training, gear, etc.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, but a lot of bodybuilders somehow find the money to do everything they need to do. It's like even though GH is expensive and steroids are expensive, and food is expensive, somehow they find the money to do everything. So very few people, out there, and there are some people, obviously guys that have families and stuff like that compete, but most single guys will spend every penny that they earn at their jobs or whatever they do for to get enough steroids, to get enough food. So I don't think there's a lot of people out there they're like, oh, if I only had $10 million, I think what that would do is for the people who have these crazy tend to be OCD on everything. I think they would probably take too much and kill themselves, type of thing. Taking 30 IUs a GH a day, which would be very expensive, is not going to make you grow better than taking 5 or 6 IUs a day. You'll be more bloated for sure, and you might gain some more additional weight, which would probably be mostly fluid retention. But I don't think you can grow better on that much more. And the reason I don't believe that is because I think there's a limiting. I know the liver can only produce so much IGF-1 in response to GH. So in other words, there's a limit on how much IGF-1 your liver can crank out per day. And just by taking more and more and more and more and more GH, at some point, your liver just says, okay, you can take more GH. I'm not going to release any more IGF-1 because I can't. I've hit my limit for the day. And you're just going to get more bloated and more insulin resistant from all this GH you're taking. So, like I said, I don't think more money would yield a better results in terms of GH, which is the most expensive thing that people use. Steroids are by comparison are way cheaper. So, and like I said, I don't think taking 10,000. I do have a friend who took 10,000 milligrams of testosterone a week for about 8 or 10 weeks, and he looked like he was going to die. The sweat that would come off him on a regular basis. I said, "You're going to die." I said, "I don't know what you're doing." He didn't die, luckily, but he was like profusely sweating and hot and over all day long. He couldn't even train because he felt like he had the flu all day long. He was constantly popping Tylenols. More is not better when it comes to drugs, and I wish it was. I wish that the more you took, the bigger you got, but it just doesn't. It doesn't exist. The body has ways to inhibit muscle growth or inhibit these drugs from working if you take too much of them, and that's just the way it is. I mean, and so. The key is optimizing performance and finding the right balance. I know it sounds very trite, but it's not, because bodybuilding is all about what I call controlled fury. It's eating enough food, but not eating too much. It's taking the right drugs and the right amounts and not pulling the old Walmart bodybuilder, as my friend Doug would say, and just try to take little bits of everything and get no results. You got to take the right amount, but not taking too much, because if you take too much, that's not good either. So you got to find the middle ground where you get the optimal performance from diet, from training. Same thing with training. You can't train 7 days a week, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours a day, right? More doesn't make it better. More makes it worse, actually, because then you're overtrained. So you got to find that optimal amount. And like I said, I don't think it has anything to do with the amount of money you have or the amount of access to things. I think what it amounts to is finding the right formula that works for your body, and then embracing that. There have been plenty of guys that didn't have a ridiculous amount of money that have gotten huge, from the Nick Walkers, Marcus Rules, Nasser El Somebodies. These were not rich guys. Jay Cutler was, digging ditches. He didn't have the money, and he got huge. And same thing with me. I didn't come from money. So you got to use your brain a little bit and optimize what you're doing.
Take a couple of more questions. Take an insulin-related question. Will more or frequent insulin spikes throughout the day have a negative effect on muscle growth? And he mentions for naturals in particular. I don't know if you want to, answer this for naturals and for enhanced, but he asks this for naturals in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to this last question I had: is more insulin better? No, because what does insulin do? Insulin controls blood sugar. It basically takes the nutrients in the bloodstream, specifically blood sugar, and it pumps it into the muscles. When the muscles are full, it pumps it into the fat cells. So taking extra insulin without eating additional food would just make you get low blood sugar, right? And if you eat extra carbs because of all this extra insulin, it's only pushing carbs into the muscle. It's not doing anything. It's not building muscle. Insulin is not a muscle building hormone. It's anabolic in the sense it drives nutrients into the cells, but it doesn't cause muscle growth like IGF-1 does, which actually tells the cell to take stem cells and turn them into mature muscle fibers. It's a different function, even though they both have this, driving of nutrients into the cell. So extra insulin is not going to do anything. Now, if you don't have enough insulin in your body and you're slightly insulin resistant, or your body doesn't produce enough insulin, and you supplement with insulin, yes, you will grow, because now you're absorbing your nutrients more efficiently and better than you were before, because you didn't have enough. So, but spiking insulin with huge shots of it, throughout the day is mostly replacing what your body would naturally produce. But if you're taking even higher amounts than your body would produce, you're just leaving yourself prone either to get low blood sugar or just get fat, because you're forcing too much nutrients into the cells, and the muscle cells are filled up, and the rest is going to go into the fat cells. So if you tend to have fat genetics where you get fat easily, taking extra insulin will make you fat. If you have fast metabolism genetics like I do, you're just going to go low blood sugar, and then you're going to wind up, having to take in sugar solutions, and that's not really going to solve anything. It'll probably get you bloated, but it's not going to make you grow.
Take one more question. Earlier this week on After Hours, there was a discussion about BPC 157 and FDA regulation. Well, this question is more in particular with testosterone being removed from the controlled drug list. So they want to get your opinion on that.
Listen, I've been saying that they should be doing it. They should have done it in 1990 after they made it illegal. It never should have been on that list. But I told the story, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, about my friend Dr. Mike. Once again, I'll mention him again. Give him some kudos up in heaven there. He said when these senators realized that the testosterone was going to make their peckers hard, he goes, they'll deregulate it and they'll make it legal. And I think everyone is pretty much has accepted the fact that testosterone replacement is here to stay. It feels great. People do better on it. It improves your health. And now that Bobby Kennedy is in office, and he realizes, and he uses it himself, he's like, let's get this crap off the controlled list. This never should have been put there to begin with. They told the guy who put all these steroids on the controlled substance list, and I said this before also, was Joe Biden when he was a senator back in the day. And the DEA told the guy, they're not drugs that you put in controlled substance list, because they're not addictive. And he didn't care, and he put them on there anyway. So thank God for Bobby Kennedy, because the guy he's very smart. He can sit down with Trump and he can explain to him what's going on. And Trump's no idiot. Trump knows testosterone and what the benefits of it are. His son is a bodybuilder. The whole family work out, and so except Trump. But so when Bobby Kennedy sits down and explains to him what's going on, he's going to see that this makes sense. And like I said, all these congressmen are all on it now, probably. So they're going to be like, this is ridiculous. We don't want to get arrested because we have a bottle of testosterone in our car. And it never should have been that way to begin with. All the anabolics should actually be deregulated. But you know what? If we can start with testosterone, that's a move in the right direction, at least.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, this weekend, we're going to be in Tampa for the 2026 Tampa Pro, and a lot of reasons for excitement. Primarily, you're going to see an epic battle. Nick Walker, James Hong set off his second place finish last week in China. Joe Palacios came so agonizingly close to qualifying for the Olympia last year at the Texas Pro, finishing runner-up to Jordan Hutchinson at the top. And then you have some other killers who are on the way. Colossus Ken in his second year as a pro. This kid out of Netherlands who everybody's talking about right now, Mansons, that's another guy to look out for. This is going to be a loaded show. We're going to have full wall-to-wall coverage for you off this show. So if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss anything and everything that we have coming up from this weekend. And of course, Classic Physique, we're going to see the superstar Gabrielle Zancanelli and Kellen Winslow. That is going to be an epic, epic battle in Classic Physique. So again, loads of reasons for excitement for this show. And again, if you're not already following us on Instagram, official_RXMuscle. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.